Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to DEI Deathwatch, where we chronicle the downfall and the doubling down of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm your host, Scribelight. It's Monday. Welcome back to Monday. Another week, another grind, another toil. But we're here once again to look at the wonderful world of equality. No, not equality. That's the opposite. A little bit different show this week because, truth be told, there wasn't much in the way of news, so to speak. There was a couple articles out there I saw of things going on, but they were effectively just retellings of things we've already covered here. So there wasn't anything really new to news, as it were. So I thought I'd fall back on some old habits, something I haven't done in quite a while, and that is look up a panel discussion on the subject from some industry professionals who are very, very keen on keeping it going. And who might that be? Human capital experts. Because that makes it sound so much more personable. Don't you love being thought of as human capital? I know I do. So, and it's a podcast even. It's not even, this is going to be a very visually unnecessary show, unless you like looking at me for some reason. But otherwise, this is one of those shows that you can safely put in the background and just listen to on the way somewhere, and you're not missing anything, except for me. And perhaps the comments I pull up from the people in the chat, such as Keeverdam. Hello, Keeverdam, and thank you, Keeverdam. Let's see, I thought I had pinned that, but I didn't pin that, so there we go. Up at the top of the chat box, guys, there's a link to a GoFundMe to our friend Truckin' with a Tablet. He is in need of some help with some medical bills. He's not looking for much, $700. He's about 1/7 of the way there. So if you can take a look at that when you have the opportunity, if you can donate, please do so. But even if you can't, if you can share that out on social media, that would be appreciated. So thank you ahead of time for that. And thank you, Keeverdam, for putting up the link. Walter Tomaszewski, hello. George and Philip knew you could pull a DEI rabbit out of your hat, Scribe. They eagerly await your perfect jokes and this hysterically bad video. To them, you are positively amazing. Well, thank you, Walter. And George and Philip. Mike R., hello. Blue-Eyed Scream, good afternoon. Morgan King, hello. Who else is here? Jay Blizza, good afternoon. Mike Savage, Blard, Unfair Ophelia, hello. I'll get to that. I'll get that right eventually. Kirill Soldier, hello. Who else is here? 01 Portnoy, hello. Attack Alpaca, hello. Miranda Stone is here, guys and gals. I'm not trying to be sexist. I don't know if you know about Miranda Stone, but in a cadence not unlike William Shatner, let me tell you. Robert Pincus, hello. Draco Rincewind, hello. Daryl Odell, good afternoon. Kirill Soldier, thank you so much, Kirill Soldier. Everyone knows that HR is run by evil witches. Well, if that's true, we have at least 2 warlocks on the panel today, which is kind of cool. I mean, warlocks. Julian Sands. Oh, poor Julian Sands. If you never saw Warlock, give it a look. Sorry, it's okay. Simon Willikins, hello. Green Death, hello. Jill Powers, the River Daughter, hello. And I think that's everybody. If I missed you, if you're lurking, if you're in the future, hello. All right, so again, this is a podcast. We have 3 human capital experts talking about what makes diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And this comes from the Conference Board. Okay, I should have looked this up ahead of time. What is the Conference Board as an association? There we go. The Conference Board, Incorporated, is a 501 nonprofit business membership and research organization. It counts 2,000 public and private corporations and other organizations as members, including the majority of the Fortune 500. Okay, so this ain't small potatoes. These are industry muckety-mucks. Bigwigs, potentates, fat cats. So yeah, what makes diversity, equity, inclusion work? You know, I honestly, I have no idea. After nigh on 10 years of looking at this stuff, I still have no idea what makes it work, except the constant struggle for money and virtue signaling. So maybe I doesn't. Maybe I does. Maybe I does. Maybe I does know how it works around here. And now we're going to watch a show together. Anyway, with all that as preamble, this is a 25-minute long discussion. We'll see how much of it I can take as we go. I will still need to pause occasionally, just for the sake of YouTube and variety. But let's see. On the off chance that I did chop off the front and the back of this for, like, they have a little intro with music and things. On the off chance I missed out on the introduction of the speakers here, we have Matt Maloof, researcher of the Human Capital Center, the conference board, okay. Marion Devine, principal researcher at the Human Capital Center in Europe. And then Alan Schweier, principal researcher, Human Capital Center of the conference board. Okay, so they're all part of the same collective, although one's from Europe, I guess. But anyway, with that, let's go.
Welcome to C-Suite Perspectives, a signature series by the Conference Board. I'm Alan Schweier, principal researcher in the Human Capital Center of the Conference Board, and the guest host of this podcast series.
I'm happy to meet you, Alan Schweier.
Today's episode examines what employees based in the US, Europe, and Asia actually experience when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
I'm assuming mandated conference meetings where you get to have a struggle session about your race or your gender, ERGs perhaps. What else? Oh, I don't know.
And where leadership perceptions diverge from frontline reality. Drawing on new global data, we explore what's working, what isn't, and what the C-suite must do next to turn DEI from intention into measurable impact.
I've said something similar to this before, and I'll probably say it again. The way people are talking about DEI now in its, what I hope is its death throes, it sounds like you're talking about it when it's only, 2 or 3 years in its activity. Why, at this late date, would you need to try to make the case for its effectiveness? You should have plenty of data after a decade or more of it being in operation. This isn't a new kid on the block situation. But okay.
Overall, we had over 1,300 responses to our survey, representing the 4 major economies of Europe, including the UK, Germany, France, and Italy, as well as responses from across the United States and Asia,
United States and Asia. Oh my gosh, this is global.
Including mainland China, India, and Singapore. Joining me today are Marion Devine, principal researcher, Human Capital Europe.
Human Capital.
And Matthew Maloof, researcher, Human Capital here in the United States.
Right.
Welcome, Matt and Marion.
Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Alan.
I'm going to start with you, Matt, but certainly Marion chime in as well. Matt, how do employee attitudes toward DEI differ across major global regions?
I didn't know that they did much DEI in China. I thought DEI was a, maybe not exclusive, but a particular sort of Western culture phenomenon. But I guess I'm happy to be corrected.
It's important to recognize that DEI support was high across all 3 regions, but the really important part was that the differences were about whether DEI is well calibrated and producing a real business impact.
Okay. So who did you survey? Did you survey businesses that were already practicing DEI? Anyway, a real business impact. You mean like, can you prove that DEI actually increases the bottom line?
When looking at the percentage of workers in those regions who said that they want to work in a place with broad diversity, that means a mix of genders, a mix of thinking styles, a mix of ages, and a mix of race and so on.
I love the fact how he left race at the end of that, when race and gender are the top two elements when it comes to DEI activities. A mix of genders. So male, female. Ways of thinking or perspectives. It's rarely, you never hear ways of thinking unless somebody's trying to blunt the edge of the racial imperative.
Found that on average, US respondents, 77% said yes, they do want to work there, and it's important to their workspace. In Asia, 70%, and in Europe, 67%.
I want to hear why. Like, what about it is so beneficial? Like, oh, well, we get a whole bunch of different perspectives and things. Yeah, but that's not how DEI operates. That's not how DEI assesses success.
Overall, support for DEI was high. But then, and we'll touch on this as we get through the conversation, there were tidbits where we found a little bit of nuance where differences arose.
I want to hear about the pushback. I mean, okay, 70% of people were on board. Okay, well, what was the opposite side saying? Even if they were in the minority, what are the concerns that exist out there?
For example, when asking, was there too much effort dedicated to DEI or too little effort dedicated to DEI, we found that the US was a little more polarized, while...
Okay, a little more polar... Okay, you were so specific in your numbers up to this point. Are you going to be as specific once you start describing pushback?
Europe had a little bit more skepticism, and Asia had the least dissatisfaction overall, meaning they were the most for DEI. We can see the...
You're not specifying what you're talking about.
3 regions, broad support overall, but differences in the nuance.
What? Okay. Again, we're just in the opening stages of this. I hope we get into the nuance. What are you talking about?
Great, Matt. It sounds like we're doing pretty well with DEI then globally.
I mean, things are polarized in America, and there's some nuance. Oh, well, that sounds like everything's going great. Yeah, it sounds like that, doesn't it?
We even mentioned investment amounts. So, Marion, I'm wondering, does this mean we're investing the right amount in DEI? And
No, we're not investing the right amount of DEI because all the corporations pulled out their billions and billions of dollars of promises in the years post-George Floyd. Why did they do that?
Does this perception vary by region?
Yeah, Alan. Overall, as Matt says, across most regions, employees say their organization is investing about the right amount.
Okay. What is the right amount?
And there are a few differences. For example, the US is perhaps a little bit more critical. About 31% in the US say companies invest too much.
Okay, so we're back to that 70-30 split in pro versus con on DEI. Okay.
And that's compared to only 12% in Europe.
Is anybody in Europe allowed to say otherwise without having the police come make a visit to their home?
But you've got to balance it with other things. Americans are likely to say that DEI improves collaboration and belonging. It is nuanced.
I have a feeling we're going to hear that word a lot.
Across Europe, there are some differences. We saw that in France, 24% say that companies devote too little to D&I. They're a little bit more critical, and that's the strongest sort of more action is needed signal in Europe. As Matt said, in Asia, there is generally more positivity, more enthusiasm. I think that really, when you stand back from it, the issue isn't simply whether companies are investing enough.
It sounds like it might be, depending. Now, I want to hear about the actual results. How do you measure success? I mean, this is a business imperative, so the business part of it must lead to increased profits that you can decidedly connect to DEI initiatives. Otherwise, is any investment being made actually paying off? What is the ROI on DEI? We have 3 professional researchers on the subject matter here. I would hope I could hear something like that.
It's whether the investment really feels calibrated and relevant.
And returned on?
It's about not thinking in terms of volume, more programs, more campaigns, but really what is working, what resonates locally, where might there be pockets of skepticism or even fatigue. It's not about the investment as such, it's about really tailored and relevant and targeted interventions.
I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. If you're investing money into these programs as a business, there has to be a business case for doing so. There has to be some sense of assurance that you're going to get a return on said investment. How do you measure success?
Yeah, what I think you're getting at too, Marion, is the big question. I mean, it's not so much whether we're investing maybe too little, the right amount, or too much. Matt, I'm going to ask you this. Do these investments translate into measurable business and workforce outcomes?
Thank you, Alan. I'm liking Alan already. Alan just cuts to the chase. All right. So now the onus is on Matt. Matt, after 10 years of waiting for somebody to explain to me why this is all worth it, falls on you, Matt. Professional researcher, tell me, oh, tell me true.
I think the clear answer is that they do.
How? How is it a clear answer? Tell me.
And with this, there's two angles. We asked respondents to tell us if the DEI practices that the organizations deploy, things like ERGs, leaders who communicate the importance of DEI, had a positive effect on their work experience.
No. I don't want to hear about work experience. I don't want to hear about fuzzy, touchy-feelies. I want to hear about hard numbers. How did profits increase as a direct result of DEI investment? If you can't give me that, then everything else is just ether.
We found that across the three regions, they said that they did. And then when we asked them if the DEI practices had a positive impact on things like collaboration, innovation, engagement, retention, there's two more that...
Profits? Is profits going to come into this?
I'm not recalling right now, but...
You're not Matt, you knew this was coming. You're a professional researcher on the subject matter. You can't recall the points that you went over in your research? I mean, even when I do like a true crime interview or something, I have a little text file with some notes on there of, little things to ask or things to remember, remind myself. Really? Okay.
We found that they also said that those had a positive impact on their experience.
I hate to tell you this, Matt. I don't care about their experience. I am going full on capitalist greed monster here. Profits. How did DEI improve a business's profits in a measurable, identifiable way?
Now, the nuance here is that they weren't super large percentages, right? In the US, it was 58%. In Europe, it was 51%. And in Asia, it was 63%.
So, for all intents and purposes, it was a toss-up. Okay.
And improving your collaboration or your engagement for 58% of the team is still a worthwhile investment and still produce positive results.
Okay, but the only positive results you're talking about so far is employee experience and feeling about things. Hard numbers, Matt. Profits, Matt. Dollars and cents.
It's just making sure, how do we transition or modify the practices that we're using to meet the needs of the other 42%, for example, in the US. There is definitely a clear reason to use these strategies and deploy them. It's just making sure we're doing it in a way that helps more than just slightly over half of our population.
Matt, and I'm obviously talking abstractly here, rhetorically. What are the needs the missing 42% are not having met? Okay, if you're not going to tell us how profits are improving, which is remarkable, but you know that 42% don't feel like these things are working, all right, fine. How would you modify current practices to meet the needs of the missing 42% or the missing half of the population that doesn't think that this is worthwhile.
Mhm.
Something I thought was interesting was that if you just look at the data, it looks like retention is one of the lowest lever, as it were. But actually, all these other ones that people talk about, engagement, collaboration,
All these abstract, touchy-feely, emotionally based things, yes.
productivity at work, those are drivers of retention. So even if people don't consciously say, oh, D&I it helped, is a factor in keeping me at a company, actually, all the effects of D&I do have an impact on people's working experience. And
Okay, so you don't have a lot of okay, you know what? I'll hand you, for the sake of argument, I'll give you a low amount of turnover. Okay, let's say the DEI prevents turnover. And that is a big concession on my part for the sake of argument, because that's not a small thing. But let's just say it does. Okay, fine. And that still doesn't prove to me that it is worth the investment. All right? If I give you that, where is the profits? There have been lots of companies long before DEI that were great places to work, that people loved being at, that never wanted to leave. And?
therefore, ultimately, retention.
That's a great point.
Is it?
Mary, sometimes we can't directly attribute good business outcomes to a program under the DEI umbrella, but
if you can't do that, then how do you know that the investment is worth it? Okay, we're 6 minutes into this thing, and they have been dancing around the proverbial $2 billion question. Is it actually worth the investment?
you can correlate it, as you say.
Yes, yeah, you can okay, they're confessing they got nothing. They've got nothing. They cannot argue with any confidence that the investment in DEI actually pays off.
To things like improving retention, which does impact the bottom line. I should mention too, I was a co-author of the report. One of the things that struck me was the big differences between the perceptions of executives, managers, and frontline employees. And Marion, where did you see this? What were some of the biggest gaps and surprises there between executives, managers, and
Yeah.
No. Whoa. Okay. Talk about burying the lead. Okay. You can correlate DEI to better retention. Causation? Oh yeah, retention can lead to increased bottom line because you're not having to retrain people and so on and so forth. You have experienced workers that know what they're doing and have connections and relationships. And yeah, you can correlate that. But that doesn't justify it. It still doesn't justify the investment. And now we're moving on. Sure.
It's really interesting looking at difference in perception, and it is perception, but of course perception really counts. Across almost all these measures, senior leaders are more positive. They are more likely to say that the organization is investing meaningfully, that the programs are effective. And
do they have a choice but to do otherwise? When you have, at least up until very recently, some of the biggest financial investment entities only willing to really dedicate themselves to companies that are on the DEI party line, when you have multiple big corporations and even smaller ones that have a financial incentive for executives and leaders to fulfill DEI quotas, are we surprised that the leaders are like, well, yeah, it's really good and we really are working on it?
certainly that D&I improves business outcomes.
Where? Prove it. You are a principal researcher at the Human Capital Center in Europe. Show me the money.
In a way, it's not surprising because they perhaps see the strategy, they see the investment, they perhaps have that overview that employees don't have.
Like?
When it comes to workers, they are more cautious. They're not quite so convinced. And managers are somewhere in the middle.
Okay, again, after over a decade of this, why are workers not yet convinced? What are the workers saying? What is the basis for which they have doubts about it? Tell us.
The sort of moral of the story really is that, first of all, it's critical that managers are in a way the bridge between the workers and the executives. If they are equipped and aligned, they can translate some of that strategy, some of those initiatives into the daily practice, the daily experience at work.
Now, I have a distinct feeling that our researchers here are not being objective. I have a feeling that they're not coming at this cold and just looking at the numbers and saying, well, is this actually worthwhile? I'm getting a very cheerleading feeling here.
And actually, I think it's encouragingly that in Europe, 74% say that their manager makes them feel included and respected, and 79% in the US say that too.
Okay, someone making you feel both included and respected, as far as the dictionary definitions, has absolutely nothing to do with DEI. Not inherently. So, yeah, if you can imagine it, if the person who is in your supervisory position listens to you and actually seems to care about your success at work and everything else, yeah, you're going to have a better experience. Doesn't mean anything about, evaluating people's job prospects and promotional opportunities on the basis of their race or their gender, so we can fill out a quota and make everything look diverse. Yeah. Throwing in some universal truisms here, it doesn't help your argument.
Obviously, managers are doing quite a good job. So really, it's more about trying to get a little bit more alignment between those three cohorts, and definitely gathering and acting on employee sentiment.
Why are you having such a hard time convincing all of the camps of the value of DEI? What is the roadblock? You must know what the employee level trepidation is about it, and you can articulate it, yes?
There's a bit of work to be done there if employees are a little bit more cautious.
Why are they cautious?
About impact.
You mentioned...
What? Oh, God! Just, why is it so difficult to speak in plain language about this? If I was watching videos or panel discussions from the same three people all the time, or the same organization, and I was getting the same quality of responses and information, you could blame me for just being very narrow focused on things or something. But I've never heard of these people before. As far as I can tell, I mean, unless it's a long time ago, I've never heard anything from this organization before. And yet, they are as opaque as every other DEI cheerleader I have ever listened to in the last 10 years. They absolutely have an abhorrence for specificity.
In the role of managers, Mary, and that struck me too, is just how big the difference was in worker perceptions of DEI if their managers were behind DEI. Matt, if you can explain that a little more.
Imagine that. Yeah, if your manager is cheerleading on a particular initiative that they effectively tie to your potential success and respect or prospects of the company. If you're, what was that? Retail Me Not. I looked at a promotional video from Retail Me Not years ago, and I think I called it a hole in the head, WHOLE, because it was bring your whole self to work. And I think it was the CEO at the end of the video, he says, if you come to work for this company and you're not on board with DEI, then this probably isn't the place for you. If you have managers, supervisors, people in charge who have that kind of attitude about DEI, yeah, I'm sure that if you have a sensation that if you're not on board with this, your job and or job prospects within the company might be at risk, I bet they are really on board with DEI. Can't imagine why. Let's see. Jill Powers, River they are grifting grants, Scribelight. Possibly so. I mean, I don't know where the conference board gets their money from, but I'm guessing it's from, well, they say it's a 501, what were they? They're a 501 charity or nonprofit or something. Yeah. Still, they got to get their money from somewhere. People are getting paid for it, so who knows. Daryl Dale, plain language, but that would mean you could understand it too. Well, hopefully. Darren Root, just say you fucked up and we can get to the point of it being your fault. Well, I mean, it is my show. Ultimately, it falls on me. I apologize. I have failed you. Oh, Darren. Joe Powers again. Ooh, I feel a theory coming on. Excuse me while I download to the Twitter. And Blue-Eyed Scream. If they were specific, then you could prove them wrong. We can't have that. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. If they actually told us what the truth was, or came at this objectively and said, well, 70% of workers say DEI is good for the workplace, but we can't find much evidence that it actually increases the bottom line, they'd be in some trouble. Anyway.
If their managers were behind DEI, Matt, if you can explain that a little more, the role that managers play in driving those perceptions amongst workers and driving to some degree whether DEI efforts are even effective at all.
Well, no. Are they effective at all? You have to have the numbers. And by effective, again, I mean if you put in $150,000 into a DEI program, one would hope that that generates a profit in the long run for that investment.
Yeah, absolutely. Marion started and hit the nail on the head in saying that managers are that middle lever. If I was a C-suite executive reading this piece, I would take away that this is the lever I want to strategize around. It's because we found that at minimum across the regions, employees who said that their managers made them feel included and respected said they were 3 times more likely, at minimum, to perceive a positive impact from DEI strategies.
It's a con job. If my manager treats me with respect, well, I suppose DEI works. Great. So the employees' residual faith in DEI because their manager was decent with them, that means DEI succeeds? Do you have to spend extra money on DEI courses, classes, and programs to find leaders who treat their subordinates with respect?
Just for an example, looking around fairness and inclusion policies.
Fairness and ooh, are we into fair? Fair?
If an employee said that they felt included by their manager, in the US, 65% said they had a positive impact. In Europe, it was 66%, and in Asia, it was 78%.
Oh my gosh, guys, can you believe it? If you're treated nicely at work, you have a better outlook of your time at work? What does that have to do with racial and gender quotas in diversity reports from Fortune 500 companies?
But if they said that their manager didn't make them feel included, it was 20% in the US, 24% in Europe, and 15% in Asia.
Oh my gosh, guys, my gosh. If you have a manager you like at work, work is a more fun place to be, and if you don't, then you don't. You are not serious people. I'm going to steal a line from Succession. You are not serious people right now. If you're comporting yourself to be some kind of data-driven research analyst on human capital, and this is the best that you've got, give me, you know what? I'll go on a podcast with a title. Give me a salary from a 501, and I'll say, when you go to work and your coworkers all have a clear idea of what the objectives are of the team, and you have a manager who gives everybody the time that they need to get their work done and is open to them about the needs and the expectations of the company, but also with the ability to help out when the circumstances call for it, you actually have a more effective team environment. Money, please!
It's a huge jump. At the low, a 40-point swing, and then at the high, a 60-point swing. If I wanted to strategize around making my DEI practices provide the best ROI, I would dedicate the most time making sure my managers are prepared to have those conversations, support their teams, and make them feel included and respected.
That is the job of the leader at its boilerplate basics. What in the heck does any of that have to do with the bolt-on albatross that is DEI? What is the ROI on that? What are you spending on hiring people who treat their subordinates with respect? Was this some kind of recent invention?
It's important to note that this puts a sort of large burden, I want to say, on managers, but an organizational lift.
That's why you pay them more money, because it is more responsibility. And there is more expectation on their shoulders to perform and achieve the outcomes beneficial to the company. What? I got a rhetorical question for Matt here. Matt, was your position in your current employ the result of a DEI hire by any chance?
Right? Even if the managers are doing a lot of the work, we still found with practices like executives who communicate the importance of DEI that they still need to be participating. And so this is definitely an important lever and you should pay special attention to it, but you can't think that it's the only thing that I need to focus on.
Why can't you articulate the importance of DEI? What does it do? How does it work? How does it lead to the bottom line going up? You guys have already conceded that you have correlation without causation. So what are we doing here? Is it the paycheck? Is that really all that's driving it at this point? As long as you say the things, you make it sound good, it's all very Hallmark card, you still get your paycheck, even if it's actually not doing anything.
Just before we take a break here, though, want to zero in on something you both mentioned. For our audience here, it seems to me it's not so much that managers themselves have a very high perception of DEI, like the senior leaders seem to have in our survey.
Why not? You just said that the managers being able to support. If the managers don't have. Okay. Back up. Let's back up a second. I am losing my mind.
I need to focus on.
Just before we take a break here, though, want to zero in on something you both mentioned. For our audience here, it seems to me it's not so much that managers themselves have a very high perception of DEI.
Shouldn't they, or else doesn't this all fall apart?
Like the senior leaders seem to have in our
the senior leaders are just more wise men on the mountain because why?
survey. What it boils down to more is that managers make the effort to make their teams feel included, and then that is going to drive more trust and buy-in for DEI initiatives.
So inclusion and basic respect is the Trojan horse delivery system for the uselessness, correlation, no causation DEI message. Yeah. Okay.
Initiatives amongst the workforce. Would you say that's right, or either one of you comment on that?
Yeah. Yeah, if you can believe it, guys, if you have someone who treats you with some basic decency, makes you feel like you're part of the team and everything else, establishes a sense of trust, and then they decide to say, oh, well, now the company wants us to do X, Y, Z, PDQ. Are you going to feel more or less comfortable with going along to get along in that situation? They're treating basic human psychology like it's a revelation.
If we think of it from like a level perspective, being an individual contributor, you're hearing these DEI practices and messages from up top, but that's not the person you're necessarily interacting with the day to day and in the moment to moment. And so managers have a key I don't want to say power, but like a moment of time in which they can make those policies feel better or not as impactful.
Yeah, we need to make sure the managers are the evangelists directly to the sheeple so that we keep this thing going and make them think that it's worthwhile.
It's like you said, it's not that they are specifically more positive around it. They just have a unique role to play in the organizational effort.
This is basic information dissemination that's got okay.
It probably as well, there's something about the nature of trust here, because
you don't say!
When you think about the components of trust, having a clear policy, a commitment, all those organizational factors is very important. But we trust people as well. We trust things when we see them in action.
I missed my calling. No, I didn't miss my calling. I missed out on an easy paycheck. This is all it takes. This is all it takes.
And that's where the manager comes into play.
Oh, you don't say.
Great. Thank you both. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with more of my conversation with Marion Devine and Matthew Malou.
Doesn't sound like much of a conversation. It's just them rattling off abstract platitudes and assurances of the efficacy and value of DEI without actually putting up any proof of it. Just people's feelings on a survey of do you feel like you're being included? Oh my gosh, my boss said good morning to me this morning when I came to work, and he even brought coffee for everybody. I'll go along with whatever they say. Okay, do we get a commercial break or something? What's this?
What does the future of work mean for your
I don't know. I'm going to skip over whatever this is.
and real-time
No, I don't care.
communication
No, I don't care.
conference board?
No, I don't care.
In the human.
Okay. I skipped over whatever the promotional thing was.
Welcome back to C-Suite Perspectives. I'm your host, Alan Schweier, Principal Researcher in the Human Capital Center of the Conference Board.
Okay, well, I'll take a break here for a moment and go over to the audience. Morgan King, like the Joker said, it is not about the money, it is about the message. It's about sending a message. Correct. Captain Krypton, the race Marxist worldview will not be threatened lest these three have seizures on a conference call from facing reality. I mean, I think this is the best they can do. This is all that's asked of them. They're not there to actually be objective. They're not there to be any kind of naysayer or focus on anything that might be questionable or contrary to the party line. That's it. You know, they can sort of give lip service to the fact that there's polarization and nuance and that not everybody's on board. I was actually kind of amazed that Alan, the host, the moderator, if you want to call it that, even brought up the idea of correlation but no causation. I thought they were going to go somewhere with that. They didn't. But, you know, what are you going to do? Let's see. What did I see? Kiro Soldier, Scribe, you're expecting DEI cultists to tell the truth? I can't say that I'm expecting it, but that little, you know, the spark of hope that is necessary for every good cynic makes me want to give them a chance. You know, because I like I said, I don't watch the same, you know, two people all the time or go to the same organization for information or anything. So you never know. You could come across someone who tells it like it is, or, you know, finally admits to some weaknesses in the thing. And this was posted just within the last, I think, week or two. So this is fresh perspective on the current state of affairs. And still, even at this late date, even with as much pushback as there is, they keep trying to give you a trust me story. Trust me. Scribe could easily pass for a DEI researcher. I took it for a while as a little bit of point of pride. I got in, this is a long time ago, and I haven't done it in a while, but in a couple of instances on Twitter, and I mean Twitter because that was that long ago, my sarcasm on some DEI things was mistaken for support. And I got into a couple of fake debates with people on that basis who thought that I was, a DEI left-wing nut job. And just for the sake of seeing how far I could take it, I just started, responding in as much DEI defense jargon as I could come up with. And I think some of it sounded pretty good for what it was. And I led them on for a while, just seeing how long it would take them. But here's the thing, I was embedding all of it with sarcasm and like over-the-top nonsense. And eventually, most of them got, wait a second. I was like, yeah, no. I was just seeing how long it would take. No offense, that kind of thing. But like I say, it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. I've probably told this story far too many times, and you can probably, I forget what it is, but it's there's a live stream I did several years ago now where I was curious to know what exactly does it take to become a DEI consultant. And so I looked up, I think it was 3 different videos from 3 different people who had advice on this. And I could have stopped at the first one because it was the most telling. You had this girl who was doing like her filming in her bedroom, sort of live blog kind of thing. And she talked about how she had been interested in this kind of work forever. And so she went to college and she got a degree in organizational psychology. And to that point, I don't know that I'd ever heard a DEI consultant list off an academic credential that sounded more perfect for what the belief system around DEI actually was. I was like, organizational psychology, that sounds like you could apply that in several places, but for DEI, if I came up as a DEI consultant and someone was asking me before they hired me as to what my credentials were, I said, well, I have a PhD in organizational psychology. That's a pretty big feather in somebody's cap, you would think. And she talked about how she got this degree in organizational psychology, and who knows how much that cost. Who knows how much was spent on that? And I remember so clearly, as she was describing this before she got into the industry, you said, it's a great thing to have, but it turns out I didn't need that at all. You don't really need that to get into DEI consultancy. And there was just this air of like palpable disappointment and depression around that admission. That she was a true believer and she spent who knows how much money and who knows how many, working hours towards this PhD. And it turns out that just to do the things she wanted to do as a vocation did not require that debt, did not require that much dedication. Absolutely devastating to hear that from somebody, but also very telling of just exactly how, what level of quality of, I don't know, believer, hardworking you have to be a DEI consultant, or in this case, research/cheerleader.
I'm joined by Marion Devine, Principal Researcher, Human Capital Europe, and Matthew Maloof, Researcher, Human Capital US. So Matt, let's talk about DEI mechanisms.
Ooh! I love the heading. Are we going to have details?
And which matter most to employees.
ERGs. Everybody loves ERGs, especially for veterans.
Is it the quality of their leadership? Is it training? Is it having employee resource groups?
Hey! Our own personal little clubs inside of the company. Oh, yeah. Read by nature. Hail. Read by nature. Don't do enough hailing around here.
In place or good policies. What did the survey results tell us?
Overall, we found that at the top of sort of those practices and strategies, we found 3 that stood out. It was fairness and inclusion policy.
Fairness and inclusion policies. What I want to know, I'd love to hear an example. Describe for me what a fairness and inclusion policy looks like. How does it differ from just basic professional politeness and respect that you would expect in any working situation long before DEI even existed?
Policies. Two is dedicated leaders who communicate the importance of DEI. And
Wait. Fairness and inclusion policies, leadership that can what again?
Practices and strategies. We found three that stood out. It was fairness and inclusion policies.
Right.
Two is dedicated leaders who communicate the importance of DEI.
Dedicated leaders that can what?
It was fairness and inclusion policies. Two is dedicated leaders who communicate the importance of DEI.
I don't know if that was a technical glitch or Matt just stumbled over his word. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. I'm assuming it means something like promote DEI.
And then the third was ERGs.
Hey, ERGs! You know what? I'm going to take at least the smallest victory lap on that one because, man. ERGs, employee resource groups. I love ERGs. I love talking about ERGs because they're so sinister and weird. Internalized employee segregation groups. Doesn't quite roll off the tongue the same way.
What I want to zero in on is that these mechanisms and strategies are visible and they're tied to the day-to-day experience.
How? Give me an active example. In the trenches, on the ground, on your average workday, what happens? I mean, ERGs are relatively self-explanatory, but I want to hear about that fairness and inclusion policy stuff.
But, and this is important, building off of what we were just talking about before the break, was that in part their effectiveness is also highly contingent on how the organization strategizes around them.
Or measurable improvements to the business's profits.
I said before, if the managers involved and making their workers feel included and respected, this sort of strategy will be more effective.
Yes, you get a lot more flies with honey than you do vinegar. Imagine that. The delivery mechanism of kindness and sweetness for a slow poison does not make the poison any less poison.
What we found was that, for example, with dedicated DEI leader and the perceived positive impact it had.
Perceived.
In the US, we had 65% of workers, in Europe, 61%, and in Asia, 74%. And then, for example, ERGs, in the US, 62%, in Europe, 56%, and in Asia, 71%.
And how did any of these investments lead to increased profits? Not correlation, but causation.
What this tells us is that, one, employees and workers want to see policies that promote fairness through either pay equity or complaint resolution.
Yeah, imagine that. Pay equity. Everybody gets the exact same pay, regardless of their job title.
Or inclusion expectations. Two, they want visible leadership. They want their sort of leadership to communicate this importance and talk about DEI rather than shy away from it. And then
Please, we want you to promote DEI. To what end? It sounds like a complete circular logic thing, right? The managers are on board with DEI. The employees want to hear about DEI. Why? What? How is this benefiting anybody? Tell me what this fairness and inclusion policy looks like. And how, in some way, shape, or form, it is exclusive and unique to a DEI framework. Because the words you're using, fairness and inclusion, when I take them as their dictionary definitions and not some sociological DEI nonsense, just sound like basic professional courtesy. So how is it anything more than that?
G's is the idea that they would have a group that they can communicate to and feel included and being able to have conversation with.
Tell us, along what lines are ERGs classically divided? Along what lines are ERGs classically divided? Race, gender, ethnicity. Occasionally they'll talk about veterans, and more often than not they'll also talk about orientation.
But like we said before, those differences do appear in the level and how much effort is dedicated to the strategy.
What are the differences? What's the pushback? God.
Interesting. So leaders who talk about DEI, ERGs where they can talk about DEI.
Boy, yeah, these crucibles where everybody's talking about DEI.
And from the balance of what you said, seeing it happen, not
What
just
happened?
hearing about it.
What happened?
We always talk about how it's different between age groups. Younger people might have perceived DEI differently than, say, people of my generation.
Maybe, especially people of your generation that have some idea of what assessing people on the basis of their skin color or their gender actually looked like in the bad old days.
What we might call baby boomers. Marion, maybe this differs between regions, but how do generational differences affect the perceptions of DEI value and effort?
I certainly was surprised in a way that generational differences didn't factor that largely.
Which is kind of scary if you think about it, because somebody who was born in the last 20 years, after a fashion, I suppose I could forgive them for having such a limited scope of understanding of what the implications of DEI are. But anybody that was alive in, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s to any cognizant degree should have some idea of the downfalls of assessing people on the basis of race. And when they don't, or they've just decided to conveniently forget the dangers of such thinking, that's the part that's always scared me. To see people elder to myself promoting the idea that we should assess people first and foremost on their appearance rather than their merit. I like it. It probably one of the more depressing things in watching this develop over time.
In our results, it's not a divide as such. There were some regional differences. In the US, generational views are a bit more spread out.
How?
So older employees are a bit more likely to say there's too much focus. Younger employees, there's more of them saying that there's not enough focus.
And who's more morally correct?
In Europe, attitudes were much more aligned across age groups. And I think in general in Europe, we didn't see any real polarization, whereas we did perhaps in some of the other regions.
Oh, well, argumentum ad populum must be right if everybody thinks it's good.
In Asia, younger employees are often very aware of DEI initiatives and they tend to report a strong positive impact, but they can also be critical as well. So the
I love how she says criticality under her breath and then doesn't elaborate. What are the criticisms? What are the criticisms? What are the concerns? What's the pushback? Why is the employee sector so hesitant as compared to the C-suite sector on this stuff?
Generational issue is less important than perhaps you might have expected. Probably the key takeaway for leaders is just don't make assumptions. Don't stereotype.
Don't make assumptions. Don't stereotype. In a DEI environment. What? Yeah.
What? You gotta be fucking kidding.
Right?
Kay Scholl, Kirsten Scholl, both on YouTube and over on the X Machine. Yes, I often forget to mention, I'm also simulcasting on X. So if you happen to see the stream over on the X Machine and you have an X account and you want to retweet that out so other people can know about it, hey, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. And hi, Kirsten Scholl. Simon Wilkins, why do they call it Godwin's Law and not argumentum ad Hitlerium? Ooh. Yeah, I don't know. I remember looking it up one time. I forget exactly what the origin of Godwin's Law comes from. I thought I keep thinking it was like an internet thing before it was anything else. So I could be mistaken. Read by nature. The DEI mechanisms, but just reminded me of a vid I watched about an Aussie DEI who sunk a ship. Oh yeah, the sea captain. She sunk the ship, and then the head of the Navy or something tried to put a shine on it by saying that nobody died. Everyone survived. As though a situation caused by the captain could then be shown as something for the captain to be proud of. Yeah, some like $100 million naval vessel or something. She wasn't qualified, but they worded along the lines of she didn't have the platform to cover. Yeah, it was nonsense. Nonsense. Okay. We got 10 more minutes of this stuff. Soldier through. I'm waiting to see if there's any more nuggets. Because here's the one thing I do know. I have learned, at least over time. If you keep a DEI proponent and advocate talking long enough, eventually they run out of veil. And some truths start to come out. Because they've run out of all the other coverage talking points. Now, this is obviously an edited podcast, so who knows what we're not hearing in the long run. But hope springs eternal.
Generations. Just treat each generation with respect. And really, it's possibly about different career stages than generations.
Oh my God, treat people with respect. And DEI is needed for that. Why?
That really matter.
Really interesting. Now, again, I co-authored the research, so I'm not surprised right now, but
I co-authored the research, so I'm the furthest thing from objective you could ask for.
I was surprised, as were you, when we analyzed the results and saw that there wasn't a big difference. I know it was a little more pronounced in the U.S., Matt.
You know, just an aside, his voice and intonation really reminds me of Donald Sutherland after a fashion. It doesn't have the same edge to it, but it has that kind of, I assume that's some kind of regional thing or something, but I'm listening to the way he talks, and I think of Donald Sutherland. I don't know if anybody else picks that up too, but
Right now, but I was surprised, as were you, when we analyzed the results and saw that there wasn't a big difference. I know it was a little more pronounced in the U.S. Matt, did you have any comment on that before we move on?
No, basically it's a similar thing that I predicted that there were going to be larger differences and was surprised to not see them.
Why did you expect larger differences? What? Oh boy.
We also looked at whether a person worked in an office setting, whether they worked in a manufacturing or industrial setting, frontline workers versus, I guess, non-frontline workers. Did we see any differences there, or in terms of perceptions?
You co-authored the research. You know, it's so silly listening to somebody who keeps telling us you co-authored the research, asking questions you already know the answers to.
So same here. When we first started the work, the hypothesis that I was operating under was that there were going to be these large differences.
Why? Okay. Why did you have that hypothesis? What was fueling your initial belief that there was going to be more of a separation? Just why?
But what we found, particularly in the US and Europe, is that it was relatively consistent over the worker types, over employees who say they work in office settings and employees who say they work in industry settings. For example, with the US, the percent of employees who said that their organization was dedicating the right amount of effort to DEI in the office, 49% said yes. For
49%, so half said yes and the other half said no.
Industry and frontline workers, 45 said yes. And then in Europe, 52% in office and 56% in industry.
So it is effectively a split decision. What is that telling you? And you know, and 49% said we're investing enough in DEI. Was the other half saying they should invest more? Or they should invest less? Was there any other kind of option?
And frontline. Those are really small percentage differences. The big difference was in Asia, where we had in the office 47% saying that their organization was dedicating the right amount of effort, and then 67% of industry and frontline workers. That's a much wider sort of 20-point gap.
How do you explain this difference in Asia?
What that actually means when we're looking at it is nearly half of the office employees in Asia believe that their organizations were doing too much, right? But only 18% of the frontline and industry workers felt that way. And so there is this perception gap that was occurring in the region.
What do the actual numbers on profits say? It's so telling that they touched upon the actual numbers on profits and investment return once, talked about correlation, but decidedly avoided causation.
So there is a perception gap, but as Miriam and you both pointed out, it's not profound, a little bit more. Well,
it's 50-50, dude. I mean, across the board, you're talking about 49% or 52%. It is half and half. That's not a gap. That is a rift, for crying out loud. Even with your own numbers, you can't be honest.
We look at it granularly in Asia somewhat, but I think it's fair to say that most of our respondents do appreciate efforts at DEI, certainly appreciate.
Most? No. Half is not most. Good golly. Simon Wilkins, could also be 25% said less and the other quarter said more as far as what should be. Yeah, exactly. It's like there's only a binary. It's like, are we investing enough? 50% say yes. We should be investing. The implication is what? The other half says we should be investing more? Or not investing enough? There's no other option? There's no naysaying whatsoever? You know, there's not, are we investing enough? We should be investing more. We should be investing less. We should be investing nothing at all. Oh boy. If these guys are professional researchers, either they are very much reining in a whole bunch of really important details and nuance, or this is the best they've got.
Diversity in the workforce. We didn't run this survey globally last year. We ran it only in the US. And there was a significant dip overall in what we might term workers' appreciation for DEI.
Why? I mean, I don't even have to ask the question of whether or not this is a pro-DEI organization. That's obvious. But why? If you're not even going to voice what the opposition is, even a little bit, how do you hope to improve those numbers? Let's set aside all of my antipathy for DEI. If somebody said, we're trying to get this thing to be more accepted by people, but there's some pushback, I'd say, okay, what is the pushback? Are these concerns that we can answer or that we can somehow, improve upon? If you're not even going to detail what the opposition is, how can you guys hope to improve the numbers if that is your intent?
Higher last year than it was this year, and was higher in 2024 than it was in 2025. So let's address the elephant in the room.
Please! It's been 18 minutes of a 25-minute sit. What are you going to talk about, and will you actually talk about it?
There's been a lot of pushback.
Yes.
There's been a lot of political pressure, at least in the US.
Yes. And will you be honest enough to say that it didn't start in 2025?
And to some degree, even in Europe, on DEI in general.
Yes.
DEI programs at work.
Yes.
So we did ask our respondents to say how comfortable they were discussing DEI at work.
Okay.
I want to ask that question and start with you, Marion, but even if you want to expand that to talk about.
Wait. How comfortable are they talking? You just told us, chapter, verse, and elsewise, that the employee sector is really, really encouraged by a manager that talks about DEI, and the employee sector wants DEI to be talked about more in this circular chain of logic. So why would anybody be hesitant to talk about it at work when nearly everybody that you surveyed is pro-DEI from the top down and the bottom up?
Whether you see maybe some impact of all this political pressure happening or reflected in our survey results this
Surprised you didn't mention any legal pressure
year. Marion, why don't you start, and then Matt?
Yeah, this was a question that we were all very interested in. We have been seeing companies in Europe particularly struggling with how to respond to some of the developments that are going on in the US.
Why? What developments? What is their concern?
And concern about how they are communicating their DE&I efforts.
Such as?
But we found actually that when looking at what do the employers think, surprisingly in the US, a sizable portion said that they're comfortable discussing DEI at work. In Europe, it's a bit lower, but it's not necessarily hostile. I think you might just say in Europe, it's perhaps a bit more restrained. And in Asia, many employees describe themselves as somewhat more comfortable rather than extremely comfortable. Again,
Okay.
and it wasn't quite what we expected.
What did you expect?
It's a very interesting topic in itself, which we could talk about for hours.
I wish you would.
Because, of course, we've got cultural attitudes here. We've got the culture of the organization to factor in as well. So I think there are nuances, and it's a conversation that's well worth having.
Just not here, apparently, when the title of the podcast is What Makes Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Work? But okay.
But it's important to remember that silence doesn't automatically mean opposition.
It also doesn't automatically mean assent. You're a researcher, right?
Silence needs to be looked at, I think. It can be uncertain to your cultural norms.
Silence is a nothing. Okay.
Or concern about saying the wrong thing. I think the risk isn't open disagreement. You can do something with an open disagreement. There's something to respond to. And in fact, our D&I leaders in Europe have been talking about engaging with resistance.
What do you guys, and I know I'm asking rhetorically, what do you guys have to say about all of the companies from 2022 up to current that have been reducing their DEI budgets, removing DEI language from their websites and other publications, have been climbing down from their DEI investments and dedications and so on and so forth? This has been going on since the fall of 2022. For all the stuff that you're talking about, oh, everybody's really on board. Oh, yeah, we have a lot of engagement. We have a lot of enthusiasm, everything. Well, but it's obviously not across the board. Because companies are changing. Companies are declining as the political and legal pressures mount up. Nothing to say about that at all. Everything's just sort of, oh, well, there's some pressure right now, but people are still really chipper about it.
And opposition, and actually seeing that as a positive thing. The real risk is quiet disengagement. That can be the real barrier.
Why is that a risk? What happens if I disengage from DEI? What's the pitfall? I mean, seriously, what is the downside? You keep making arguments seemingly in support of all the benefits, even though you won't name them specifically and can't show any causation to any profits with the company. But okay, what is the danger? If a company gets rid of their DEI program, what's the downside?
To building an inclusive workplace when people are just disengaged, they're quiet, they're not talking about it.
Not talking about DEI does not mean I'm disengaged from the workplace. It means I'm not talking about something that has no demonstrable value. Oh no, maybe I should focus on doing my job some more.
Again, the takeaway for leaders is it's not about forcing conversation. It's really about understanding the culture of your own organization.
It's not about forcing conversation. You guys have been doing nothing but extolling the virtues of managers and leaders who are vocally supportive of DEI all the time to make employees comfortable with being in part of DEI. Am I missing something?
And at the workforce level, and also just creating that psychological safety that people do feel that they can talk. And really, it's also about making sure that inclusion feels practical. It's not something abstract or ideological. People can.
You, in this instance of all people, warning against making inclusion sound too abstract and ideological? Man.
Talk about it in very everyday behaviors and situations.
Like what? This is your perfect opportunity to be the change you want to see. Give me some specificity. Give me an active example. What does inclusion look like in the workplace?
Thanks, Marion. Matt, your thoughts on that?
Definitely agree with everything Marion said, but wanting to add off that, again, when we looked here specifically at how managers who support their workers and make them feel included and respected played a role on how comfortable they were talking about DEI, we found that managers who do that lead their workers to feeling more comfortable.
How many times have they said the same thing now? If you have a manager who treats their subordinates with respect, makes them feel part of the team, listens to them, and so on and so forth, when manager brings up some corporate program or starts introducing some other stuff that comes down from on high that the team's going to have to work on now, that they're more receptive to that. Also, your paycheck depends on it. Our speaker, Matt, seems to have one talking point over and over and over and over again. If you can believe it, if your boss is friendly and personable, you're going to have an easier time going along with the boss at work. You're going to have less resistance to things being handed down. Or at the very least, see yourself as like, well, gotta, pick up my share of the load for the sake of the team. Read by nature. It's a very interesting topic I could talk about for an hour. Oh, look, is that the time? Yeah, exactly. Luke Skywalker 2. Hey, Scribbles just got off work. Has this talk been any good? If you don't know me by now, you will never, never, never know me. Ooh. Shio Gorath. Well, surely he couldn't disagree with the woman. I couldn't agree with Shirley more on this, or Marion more. Yeah. We're almost there, guys. Almost there.
It's important to recognize that those conversations could be happening in a variety of places, and building that trust, that's a component that Marion talked a little bit about earlier, is super integral for making workers feel comfortable in having those conversations.
Those conversations, courageous conversations. Can Glenn Singleton be far behind? Yeah, if you can believe it. Having a boss that you have some trust in and see is actually there to lead you and doesn't deny you and makes you feel included, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Thank you both for that. I liked the idea that if they weren't talking, this would be something to be very concerned about. You want to get them talking. And as you both said, the manager has a big role to play in creating that psychological safety and environment for people to feel free about speaking about DEI despite the pressures. And
speaking about DEI, boy, you guys make it sound like it's, it is. It's a religion. It's a religion. Let's take some time and hear the good word of DEI. Do you feel comfortable talking about DEI amongst your peers? Well, we can make it more comfortable for you.
Maybe managers should start those conversations.
What conversation? Just describe for me the kind of conversation you want to see happening that DEI and only DEI allows to take place.
My last question.
Have you had any questions or just looking for them to validate the study that you co-authored?
To both of you is, what is the main takeaway from this research for the C-suite?
What is the main takeaway? Oh, the DEI is doing great. There's still a lot of work to be done, but we're doing fine.
What strategic shifts should senior leaders make to improve DEI credibility and the return on investment?
Actually show the return on investment in hard numbers. That'd be a good start. But you guys can't do that, can you? You already confessed you can't. Correlation, no causation. Boy, oh boy, we sure think that DEI leads to higher retention rates, which has the knock-on effect, if you believe that, on saving the company money, so that kind of improves the bottom line, but we can't prove that that's what's going on.
Marion, do you want to start?
Does she have a choice?
Yes, Alan. Again, where there's a lot of scrutiny, perhaps some controversy, I think one of the big messages is employees broadly support these DE&I initiatives.
Broadly support, when most of your numbers have been veritable 50-50s. Right.
But what they're less convinced about is impact.
They broadly support something that they're not sure actually does what it says it's going to do. Do you see the disconnect between those two things?
Therefore, something that's important for leadership is to really think about how do they prove the value and the impact.
Show the actual ROI. You guys have even made the same use of turn of phrase in this thing. ROI. What is the ROI on DEI? Provable. Not correlated, causal. Here's DEI, and here's the profits it made. Because of it. Not because we can kind of, sort of, maybe tie retention rates to a feel-good workplace, but no, that DEI that assesses people's value on the basis of their race, their gender, their orientation, actually leads to higher profits.
Of their DE&I. It's about less noise, but more evidence.
And after 10 years, you're only now coming to this conclusion? Okay.
And stronger everyday leadership. When it comes to measuring impact, it's really looking at the things that matter about belonging, trust, people seeing fairness in advancement.
What does that mean, fairness in advancement? I mean, I know what I think it means on a, temporal plane rational level. What does that mean? I can only assume it means equality of outcome and not equality of opportunity.
So measuring what really changes. The second takeaway is really focus on the things that have high impact, cut the low impact initiatives, do fewer things, have the confidence to do fewer things, but do them well.
Like what? What is a high impact versus low impact? See, part of me is frustrated that they're not being specific. That alone is frustrating all by itself, as I think you know. The other part is that I don't just watch these things to torture myself. I actually do want to learn what the argument is. What are the arrows in their proverbial quiver? If they have something that they're proud of and that they want to show off as evidence of their success, of evidence of the efficacy of DEI, whether I think it's real or not, or actually makes the point, I want to hear it. I don't want to hear abstracts. I want to hear what is it that they think shows off their bona fides. Just so I can evaluate it and know about it. And so, yeah, on the one hand, it's just like they won't specify anything. On the other hand, I'm not getting anything out of this except more sophistry.
And then third, and I think most important, invest in managers across all regions. As Matt's saying, when employees feel respected and included by their managers, the perception of DEI shifts dramatically.
You know, for a second there, I thought you said the deception of DEI shifts dramatically. Did you hear that too?
Is really focus on the things that have high impact, cut the low impact initiatives, do fewer things, have the confidence to do fewer things, but do them well. And then third, and I think most important, invest in managers across all regions. As Matt's saying, when employees feel respected and included by their managers, the perception of DEI shifts dramatically.
I know she said perception, but it sounded like deception, and that's just warms the cockles of my dark, dark heart.
So manager behavior is really important to look at. And then I suppose finally, Matt, I hope I'm not taking everything here, is to localize. What resonates in Europe may differ from the US or Asia.
I guess it might, but you guys are all reporting effectively similar numbers, regardless of region, whatever those numbers are supposed to mean. So
think global in your strategy, your targets, your vision. But
what is that? What does that mean?
But when it comes to the implementation, definitely think local.
My vision should be global. My implementation should be local. Should my vision be local to get the most effectiveness out of my time and efforts?
Thanks, Miriam. Matt?
Definitely.
Matt, hey, Matt, let me ask you something, Matt. Is it important for managers to treat their subordinates with fairness and make them feel included? I'm not sure. Can you tell me?
I agree with those four. And then one that sort of stood out to me as I think is an important takeaway is that there's an opportunity cost to silence. And
ooh, like what?
what do I mean by that?
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
We found that workers want to have these conversations.
What conversations?
And they want leaders who are talking about these sort of strategies and practices.
What strategies and practices?
And bringing that transparency.
Transparency? Good God, man. You are about as transparent as a Florida bog water. Good gravy.
To the front of the organization. It's important to remember that you may not have it perfect right now, but to build it out better and to get closer to being the best the strategies and practices can be, you need to have those conversations.
What conversations?
And talk about them with your workforce. And so the key takeaway is don't shy away from the conversations.
The conversation! Is Gene Hackman around here?
Yeah, thank you both very much. And I would just maybe wrap it up by saying, I don't want to oversimplify it, but just listening to what you both said just now, make people feel included, respected, and make them feel like they belong could go a long way toward making DEI, if we even want to call it that, strategies work. Like the single thing, and not that that's easy, but the thing that leaders...
I'm done. We're done. We're done. No. There's like 12 seconds left. I don't care. The Conversation is an excellent Gene Hackman film. Indeed it is. And did you know that the movie theory is that the film Enemy of the State is technically a sequel to The Conversation? That Gene Hackman's character in Enemy of the State is just a advanced in time version of his character from The Conversation? There are some flaws here and there, depending on how you look at it, but it's sort of like The Rock being a James Bond film. Enemy of the State could be The Conversation 2. Kind of almost is. Yeah. Scribe had to reboot himself. Yeah, really. It's just the conversation. We have to have those conversations. Those really important conversations. It's important for managers to be able to allow employees to have these conversations, to initiate these conversations. Conversation. Anyway, All right, well, that was DEI Deathwatch for the week. Almost exactly on time. Yeah. I think in the rare instance, as this was, that there wasn't much in the way of news for the week, I will subject myself to the latest in thinking on DEI from career professionals, just so I can keep tabs on what they're saying, which is second verse, same as the first. Honestly, the last couple of DEI things, explicitly DEI things we've looked at, whether it was a TED Talk or this or other, you could take any of them and plop them down anywhere inside the last 10 years and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. You know, save for the slight allusions to political pushback in this, nothing of what I've heard wouldn't have fit in 2019. It would sound just as generic then as it does now. Same promises, same trust me stories, same assurances without specificity. Assassin of the Gray. They are con artists on the grift, nothing less. I know. I'm aware. At the same time, though, they still hold a whole lot of control and influence over corporate America. If whenever the administration of the country turns back to a more liberal-minded set, this is going to come roaring back because all the gates are going to be opened. And we're still seeing over and over again examples in especially colleges and universities, and you know what's happening in the corporate world too, where they catch these people on hidden camera just saying, yeah, we changed things on the website, but we're still pushing the policies. It's under the surface and not very far. And like I've said, unless or until there is serious consequence to ward off this stuff and enforcement of existing laws and policies elsewise, paychecks will still be available for this. But anyway, guys, that's DEI Deathwatch for the week. Programming note, Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern will be the next episode of TED Excellence, where we'll take a look at another off-brand TED Talk for education and enlightenment. By the way, I also have a Discord server, at least for as long as Discord is a viable platform and doesn't turn into any more of a disaster area than it already has in some places. Would you like to join the Discord server with that kind of endorsement? Well, a link to the Discord server is in the chat right now. Click on that link. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you actually watched the stream, are not a bot, and have thus earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is conversation. Just say hello, conversation, and I'll know that you watched the show. Outside of that, everybody, I want to thank you all for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or at the top of the chat box, guys, there's a link to a GoFundMe to help out our friend Truckin' with a Tablet with some medical bills. Not asking for much in the long run, $700. He's about a seventh of the way there, so if you can donate, please do so. But even if you can't, if you can share that out on social media. What are your thoughts on the current state of DEI? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to like, share, subscribe, do all that good YouTube stuff. I appreciate it either way. Everyone, hope you have a good rest of your Thursday. Hope you have a good Thursday. It's not Thursday. It's Monday. Have a good rest of your Monday. I thought it was TEDx for some reason. Have a good rest of your Monday and the week ahead of you. Hope to see you on Thursday. And I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. And I will hopefully see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.